Beneath the burning sun of Egypt, on the golden sands of Giza, there stand monuments so immense, so timeless, that they seem less like works of human hands and more like eternal features of the earth itself. The Great Pyramids, rising with a precision and grandeur that has defied centuries, they dominate the desert horizon as if carved not in stone, but in time itself. Most of us know the accepted story. The pyramids are said to be about 4,500 years old, built during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu in the 4th dynasty of ancient Egypt. They are monuments to power, tombs for kings, symbols of a civilization at its peak. At least, this is what history books tell us. But what if the story is incomplete? What if these colossal monuments are not simply the work of a Bronze Age kingdom, but relics of something far older, something that stretches beyond the boundaries of recorded history? What if the Great Pyramids are not 4,500 years old, but tens of thousands of years old, belonging to a forgotten age of humanity, erased by time? It is a question that whispers to us across the desert wind, one that unsettles our certainty. Because if the pyramids are older than we think, then everything we believe about human civilization, its timeline, its capabilities, its origins, may have to be rewritten. As you close your eyes and imagine standing at the foot of the Great Pyramid of Khufu, picture its staggering scale. Over 2.3 million limestone blocks, each weighing between 2 and 80 tons, stacked with such precision that even today, with lasers and satellite measurements, the alignment to the cardinal points of the compass is nearly perfect. The base covers 13 acres. Its height once soared nearly 150 meters, taller than any structure built on Earth until the Eiffel Tower, over 4,000 years later. And yet, despite centuries of study, the pyramid keeps its secrets. How it was built remains a subject of debate. Why it was built continues to stir argument. And perhaps most mysterious of all, when it was truly built. Archaeologists, using hieroglyphs, inscriptions, and historical records, anchored the construction of the Great Pyramid around 2560 BCE. But geology tells a different story. Some researchers argue that the weathering patterns on the surrounding stones, particularly on the nearby Sphinx, suggest water erosion far older than the desert climate of the past 5,000 years could allow. If true, it would mean these monuments date back to a time when Egypt was lush, fertile, and drenched in rainfall, perhaps 10,000 years ago or more. This is where the mystery deepens. If the pyramids are older, who built them? Was there a lost civilization, now forgotten, capable of feats rivaling or surpassing the Egyptians we know? Could it be that the builders left no trace but these enduring monuments, silent messages across millennia? The question is tantalizing because it reopens ancient possibilities. Plato spoke of Atlantis, a mighty civilization swallowed by the sea thousands of years before his time. Egyptian priests, according to Greek historians, told tales of ages stretching back not centuries, but tens of thousands of years. Myths from cultures around the globe speak of cataclysms, floods, and forgotten epics when gods or giants built structures too great for ordinary humans. To mainstream historians, these are myths, stories, not facts. But standing in the shadow of the Great Pyramid, myths no longer feel like stories. They feel like echoes. The stones themselves seem to whisper, "We are older than you know." The fascination with the pyramids being older than believed is not just about stone and date. It is about us. Because if they are older, then it means humanity has risen before, perhaps many times. It means civilizations have reached heights of knowledge, then fallen into silence, leaving only fragments for us to discover. It means our story is not a straight line from cave to city, but a cycle of rise and ruin, memory and forgetting. Look again at the pyramid. Its sides, though weathered, are straight. Its corners, though eroded, still align almost perfectly with true north, south, east, and west. Could such precision be achieved by a people just emerging from the Stone Age, without iron tools, without the wheel, without advanced mathematics? Perhaps. Human ingenuity is vast. But perhaps it also hints at something more, a knowledge handed down, inherited, or rediscovered from a forgotten time. In the stillness of night, when the desert cools and the stars blaze above, the pyramids seem even more mysterious. They are aligned not only to the cardinal points, but also to the stars. Some researchers argue that their layout mirrors the constellation of Orion, associated by the Egyptians with Osiris, god of the afterlife. But here too lies a puzzle. The alignment matches Orion's belt not as it appears today, but as it appeared thousands of years earlier, long before the accepted date of construction. Coincidence? Or evidence of an older design, a plan passed down across generations, rooted in a memory of skies long past? We may never know for certain, but the possibility cannot be dismissed. The pyramids stand unyielding beyond our explanations. Whether 4,500 years old or far older, they embody a mystery that history has yet to solve. And that mystery is why we return to them, again and again, in documentaries, in books, in late-night conversations. Because they remind us that history is not as fixed as we think, that the story of humanity is still unfolding, and that beneath the sands of Egypt, secrets still wait. So, what if the Great Pyramids are older than we think? The question itself is a doorway into deeper mysteries of time, of civilization, of memory. And as we step through that doorway, we find not just the pyramids, but ourselves, our hunger for knowledge, our awe before the unknown, and our quiet hope that the past is richer and stranger than we have ever imagined. If we step away from speculation for a moment and look at what Egyptologists, archaeologists, and historians tell us, the story of the Great Pyramid becomes one of ambition, ingenuity, and human determination. It is the narrative written in museums, carved into textbooks, and taught in classrooms across the world. According to this account, the Great Pyramid of Giza is not the relic of a forgotten civilization, but the crowning achievement of Egypt's Old Kingdom, the age of the pyramid builders. The story begins with a man, Pharaoh Khufu, also known by his Greek name, Cheops. Khufu ruled during the 4th dynasty, around 2600 BCE, a time when Egypt was consolidating power, expanding agriculture along the Nile, and achieving monumental feats of architecture. His father, Pharaoh Sneferu, had already experimented with pyramid construction, transitioning from the earlier stepped pyramids to the smooth-sided structures that defined the era. By the time Khufu ascended the throne, the techniques were in place. What remained was to build bigger, stronger, and more enduring than ever before. According to the mainstream timeline, Khufu ordered the construction of a pyramid that would serve as his tomb and eternal resting place. It was to be built on the Giza Plateau, a limestone ridge overlooking the Nile Valley, chosen for its stability and prominence. Work began soon after his reign started, and it is believed to have continued for about 20 years. Here, the traditional story emphasizes human labor and organization. Herodotus, the Greek historian who visited Egypt nearly 2,000 years later, recorded tales of 100,000 workers conscripted to the project. Modern estimates vary, suggesting perhaps 20,000 to 30,000 skilled laborers, not slaves as often imagined, but a rotating workforce drawn from Egypt's peasantry, who labored during the Nile's flood season when farming was impossible. The logistics are staggering. More than 2.3 million blocks of limestone and granite were quarried, transported, and set into place. The average block weighed about 2.5 tons, with some granite pieces inside the king's chamber weighing up to 80 tons. The limestone casing stones, polished to gleaming perfection, reflected the sun so brightly that the pyramid would have shone like a jewel in the desert. From miles away, it must have appeared less like a building and more like a piece of the sun itself. How were these stones moved? Here lies one of history's most persistent puzzles. The accepted explanations suggest a combination of ramps, sledges, and levers. Long earthen ramps may have been built to haul blocks upward. Workers may have poured water on sand to reduce friction for sledges. Teams of hundreds hauled together, inch by inch, year after year. It was not magic, but relentless effort, guided by remarkable organization and engineering skill. The precision is another marvel. The Great Pyramid's base is nearly perfectly level, within fractions of an inch, despite covering 13 acres. Its sides align almost exactly with the 4 cardinal directions, deviating by less than a degree. Its internal passages and chambers, carved into solid stone, follow complex geometrical designs that still baffle engineers. For a civilization without iron tools, without the wheel, without modern machinery, the accomplishment seems almost impossible. And yet, according to Egyptologists, it was achieved through patient trial, error, and refinement of techniques developed over centuries of pyramid building. Inside the pyramid, 3 main chambers await: the king's chamber, the queen's chamber, and the subterranean chamber. The king's chamber, lined with massive granite blocks from Aswan, 500 miles to the south, holds the remains of what is believed to be Khufu's sarcophagus. The queen's chamber, smaller and more mysterious, may have been intended for symbolic purposes rather than a burial. The subterranean chamber, cut deep into the bedrock, remains unfinished, its purpose uncertain. Above the king's chamber are a series of relieving chambers, stacked spaces designed to redistribute the immense weight of the pyramid above, preventing collapse. This architectural innovation speaks to the Egyptians' practical genius. They understood the physics of stone, even if not in the mathematical language we use today. Hieroglyphic graffiti, found inside the relieving chambers, provides one of the strongest pieces of evidence linking the pyramid to Khufu. These marks, left by the work crews, include the name of Khufu and references to the gangs of workers who hauled the stones. For Egyptologists, this is proof that the pyramid was indeed constructed during Khufu's reign, not by some forgotten civilization. From this perspective, the Great Pyramid is not mysterious at all. It is the ultimate expression of the Old Kingdom's wealth, power, and vision. It reflects a society capable of mobilizing vast resources, feeding and housing tens of thousands of laborers, and planning construction on a scale no other culture of the time could match. It stands as a monument not to lost worlds, but to the genius of ancient Egypt. And yet, even within the mainstream account, mysteries remain. Why such precision? Why such immense scale? Why align with the stars so carefully if the purpose was merely to house a pharaoh's body? And why, after the pyramids of Giza, did Egyptian pyramid building decline? Later pyramids, though numerous, are smaller, less precise, and many have collapsed into rubble. If Giza represented the pinnacle, why was it never surpassed? Some suggest that the Great Pyramid was less a tomb and more a symbol, an eternal beacon of power, designed to remind the living of the pharaoh's divine status. Others argue that it may have had ceremonial or astronomical purposes, perhaps tied to Egypt's cosmology and its belief in the afterlife. Whatever the truth, even the mainstream narrative admits gaps, spaces where questions remain unanswered, inviting speculation. So this is the accepted story. Khufu, 4th dynasty, 4,500 years ago. A tomb, a monument, a triumph of human effort. It is a story of possibility, a reminder of what human beings can achieve even without modern technology. But once we accept the official version, we must return to the unsettling question. What if it is not the whole story? What if the graffiti, the records, the dates are only part of the truth? What if the pyramid was not built entirely in Khufu's time, but merely inherited, restored, repurposed, adapted from something far older? Here is where the debate begins. The accepted story gives us confidence, structure, a neat narrative. But the stones themselves, weathered, eroded, silent, whisper other possibilities. And to listen to those whispers, we must move beyond what textbooks tell us, into the realm of anomalies, evidence, and mysteries that refuse to fit. If we stand once more at the foot of the Great Pyramid and let our eyes travel over its weathered stones, we may notice something that rarely makes its way into textbooks. The blocks are not just worn by wind and sand. They carry patterns of erosion, patterns that, to some observers, do not look like the work of desert forces at all. They look like the scars of water. This observation, simple yet controversial, has ignited one of the greatest debates in archaeology. Could the pyramids and their neighbors, particularly the Sphinx, have been exposed to heavy rainfall? And if so, what does that mean for their age? To understand the controversy, we must first recall Egypt's climate. For the past 5 millennia, the region has been arid. The Sahara has been a desert, dry and unforgiving. Rainfall has been minimal. And yet, when geologist Robert Schoch of Boston University studied the Great Sphinx in the early 1990s, he concluded that the erosion on its body was consistent not with wind and sand, but with prolonged exposure to heavy rains. To Schoch, this meant the Sphinx had to be far older than the conventional 4,500-year date, perhaps 7,000, 9,000, or even 12,000 years old, dating back to a time when Egypt was lush, wet, and fertile. If the Sphinx is older, what of the pyramids nearby? Could they too bear the marks of water, built in an age when the Sahara was green? Some alternative researchers, like John Anthony West, argued that the pyramids were not simply products of the Old Kingdom, but inheritances from a forgotten epoch. Their weathering patterns, they claimed, tell a story of antiquity far deeper than official records admit. Of course, mainstream Egyptology resists this claim. Archaeologists point to inscriptions, tools, and cultural context to support the 4,500-year timeline. They argue that wind and salt can produce similar erosive effects, and that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Yet the water weathering theory persists because once seen, it is difficult to unsee. The Sphinx, crouching near the pyramids, seems to wear the memory of storms that should not have been. Geology is not the only clue. There are also the astronomical alignment. The 3 pyramids of Giza appear to mirror the stars of Orion's belt. But when matched precisely, the alignment corresponds not to the sky as it appears today, nor to 2500 BCE, but to the sky around 10,500 BC, thousands of years earlier. This is the essence of the Orion correlation theory, proposed by Robert Bauval. If true, it suggests that the builders designed the pyramids to reflect a memory of the heavens as they appeared long before the Old Kingdom. Could it be coincidence? Skeptics say yes. The pyramid's placement could be explained by practical concerns, and the Orion match may be an artifact of imagination. But the theory adds weight to the whispers. Perhaps these monuments were conceived in an age long forgotten, their builders gazing at skies now buried beneath time. And then there is the question of scale and technique. The Great Pyramid is not simply large, it is precise beyond reason. Its sides deviate from true north by less than 1/20th of a degree. Its base is level within mere centimeters. For a people supposedly without advanced tools, surveying equipment, or knowledge of complex mathematics, this achievement seems extraordinary. Alternative historians argue that such precision suggests inherited knowledge, techniques preserved from an earlier civilization, one advanced enough to understand geometry, astronomy, and engineering on a scale we struggle to explain. Other anomalies deepen the mystery. Granite blocks weighing up to 80 tons were transported from Aswan, 500 miles away. How were they moved without wheels? How were they lifted into place, sometimes more than 40 meters above ground? Ramps may explain some of it, but not all. The logistics, even today, inspire awe. And awe, in turn, fuels speculation. Perhaps these were not simply feats of brute labor, but echoes of methods we no longer understand, methods developed in an earlier age. Taken together, erosion, alignments, precision, the signs point to a question too large to ignore. What if the Great Pyramids are older than we think? What if they belong not only to Khufu's Egypt, but to a deeper layer of human history, stretching back into prehistory? To entertain this possibility is to open a door onto forgotten world. Around 12,000 years ago, Earth was emerging from the last ice age. Glaciers melted, seas rose, and climates shifted dramatically. Many ancient myths speak of great floods, cataclysms that destroyed civilizations and forced survivors to begin again. Could the pyramids be remnants of such a lost world? Monuments that endured while their builders vanished? This idea resonates because it echoes across cultures. From Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica, from India to Scandinavia, stories of ancient floods and lost golden ages persist. In Plato's dialogues, Atlantis was destroyed around 9,000 years before his time, roughly 11,600 years ago, near the end of the Ice Age. The timing aligns hauntingly with the geological hints in Egypt. If true, it would mean that the pyramids are not just tombs, not just monuments, but messages from a forgotten chapter of humanity. Survivors of cataclysm may have carried knowledge forward, embedding it in stone to withstand the ravages of time. The pyramids would then be not only graves of kings, but anchors of memory, reminders of a world we no longer recall. Of course, the mainstream holds firm. The hieroglyphs, the inscriptions, the historical context all tie the pyramids to Khufu and his era. Yet the stones tell another story, one that science has not fully reconciled. And between the official story and the whispers of greater age lies a gap filled with mystery, speculation, and possibility. So the signs of greater age remain, carved into the rock, etched into the sky. They are not proof, but they are hints, and hints are enough to keep us listening, wondering, dreaming. Because if the pyramids are older than we think, then history is not what we believe. It is deeper, stranger, and more fragile. And in the quiet of the desert night, when wind moves across the plateau and the stars burn overhead, the pyramids seem to murmur the same thought: we have been here longer than you know. Across the world, cultures separated by oceans and centuries have preserved stories of lost world. Myths of golden ages that ended in cataclysm. Tales of vast kingdoms swallowed by water or fire, leaving only fragments behind. These legends echo with uncanny familiarity, as if they are not simply stories, but memories, collective whispers of civilizations erased by time. In Egypt, the land of the pyramids, such whispers are especially powerful. Ancient Egyptian priests, speaking to Greek visitors, claimed that their history stretched back not just centuries, but tens of thousands of years. They told of cycles of civilization, of ages of greatness followed by disaster. Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, recorded stories of dynasties older than the stars, of kings whose reigns extended beyond imagination. To the Greeks, accustomed to shorter timelines, these claims seemed extraordinary. But to the priests, they were simple truth. One of the most intriguing accounts comes from Plato, the philosopher of Athens. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, he relays a story told by Solon, an earlier Greek statesman, who had traveled to Egypt centuries before. There, Egyptian priests supposedly revealed to Solon that the Greeks remembered only one great flood, the story of Deucalion, but that Egypt remembered many. Civilizations had risen and fallen repeatedly. And one of those, they said, was Atlantis. According to Plato, Atlantis was a mighty empire that existed around 9,000 years before his time, roughly 11,600 years ago, near the end of the last ice age. It was a place of advanced knowledge, vast resources, and monumental architecture. But through arrogance and corruption, Atlantis fell out of favor with the gods and was destroyed in a single day and night of catastrophe, swallowed by the sea. To many, Atlantis is myth, allegory, a tale to illustrate philosophy. Yet to others, it is memory, an echo of a real civilization lost to floods, preserved in Egyptian lore. If Atlantis, or something like it, did exist, could the pyramids be part of its legacy? Some researchers believe so. They argue that survivors of a cataclysmic flood may have carried knowledge to Egypt, seeding the skills that would one day flower into the pyramid. The astonishing precision, the astronomical alignments, the unexplained erosion, these, they suggest, are fingerprints of a forgotten people. But Atlantis is not the only legend. In Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, ancient texts describe a great deluge that wiped out early humanity. The Sumerian king list records kings who reigned for thousands of years before the flood, and far shorter reigns afterward. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of humanity's oldest stories, a flood hero survives catastrophe by building a great vessel, echoing the later biblical tale of Noah. These stories, spread across cultures, suggest a shared memory of disaster, of civilizations reset by forces beyond their control. Even farther afield, in Mesoamerica, the Maya and Aztec peoples spoke of successive suns, ages of the world destroyed by fire, wind, and flood, each giving way to a new humanity. In India, Hindu tradition describes vast cycles of time, with civilizations rising and falling over spans so immense they dwarf recorded history. The Mahabharata and Ramayana describe weapons of unimaginable power, battles that sound eerily like echoes of technologies we have only recently imagined. Are these simply myths, or distorted memories of real events? Mainstream historians lean toward allegory. But for those who stand before the pyramids, the possibility is difficult to dismiss. Could it be that the Egyptians themselves inherited fragments of an earlier age, stories preserved in stone rather than in books, whispers carried across millennia? Even within Egypt, there are hints of deeper timelines. The historian Manetho, writing in the 3rd century BCE, compiled a history of Egypt based on temple records. He listed dynasties stretching back thousands of years before the unification of Egypt, including reigns of gods and demigods who ruled for millennia. To modern readers, this seems fantastical. But what if it is not literal? What if it reflects memory, ancient rulers whose deeds were mythologized, but who belonged to a civilization now lost? The pyramids themselves could be the strongest myth of all. Their shape, the pyramid, appears not only in Egypt but across the world. In Mesopotamia, ziggurats rose toward the heavens. In Mesoamerica, the Maya and Aztecs built stepped pyramids for their god. In China, massive earthen pyramids still dot the landscape, some hidden beneath hills and forests. In Indonesia, the megalithic site of Gunung Padang has been argued by some researchers to predate all others. How could so many cultures, separated by oceans, build such similar forms? Mainstream historians argue for convergent evolution of ideas. Pyramids are stable structures, easy to build tall. But to others, the similarity suggests connection. A shared origin, or a memory passed down from a common source. A lost civilization whose influence rippled outward across the globe. The legends of forgotten civilizations, then, are not isolated stories. They are part of a chorus repeating across continents and centuries. Floods, golden ages, cataclysms, gods who walked among men. these tales appear everywhere. And when we stand at Giza, looking at the pyramids, they seem to embody those very myths in stone. Perhaps this is why the pyramids feel older than history, because they resonate not only with Egypt's story, but with humanity's collective memory of loss and longing. They are monuments not only of a pharaoh's ambition, but of our shared intuition that civilizations have come and gone before, and may yet come and go again. So are the pyramids relics of Atlantis? Proof of Mesopotamian flood myths? Survivors of an age of gods and giants? We cannot say for certain, but their endurance, silent, immovable, eternal, keeps the question alive. And maybe that is the true power of the pyramids. They are not just tombs or monuments or even mysteries. They are mirrors of our myths, stone embodiments of our longing to believe that the past was grander, stranger, older than we dare to imagine. The Great Pyramid rises from the desert like a riddle carved in stone. More than 2.3 million blocks, some weighing as much as 80 tons, stacked with breathtaking precision, aligned almost perfectly with true north, and engineered with tolerances so fine that even today we struggle to match them. Standing before it, the question seems inevitable. How was this possible? The mainstream answer, as we have seen, is ramps, sledges, ropes, and tens of thousands of laborers. But when we look closely at the scale, precision, and logistics, doubts creep in. Could such monumental architecture truly have been achieved with such simple tools? Or did the builders, whether Egyptian or older, possess technologies we have lost? Consider first the stone itself. Many of the blocks are limestone, quarried nearby. But deep within the pyramid, in chambers like the King's Chamber, lie granite blocks hauled from Aswan, more than 500 miles to the south. Each block weighs between 20 and 80 tons. To move such masses without wheels, without iron, without cranes, seems almost unthinkable. Modern engineers would require specialized machinery to lift and transport them. Yet somehow, in deep antiquity, they were cut, shipped, and set into place with astonishing accuracy. How were they cut? Granite is among the hardest stones on Earth, second only to diamond. Bronze tools, the technology of the time, would have been nearly useless. And yet, in the quarries of Aswan, we find unfinished obelisks and blocks, bearing marks of cuts that seem to suggest drills, saws, or other methods far beyond bronze chisels. Some researchers have argued that tubular drilling marks found in Egypt show signs of high-speed drilling, the kind produced by advanced tools, not the slow pounding of primitive hammers. Then there is the question of precision. The base of the Great Pyramid is almost perfectly level, deviating by less than an inch across 13 acres. Its sides align within a fraction of a degree to the cardinal points of the compass. Its angles and proportions reflect geometric knowledge, so exact that some have called it a stone encyclopedia, encoding the value of pi, the golden ratio, and even measurements of Earth itself. Was this coincidence or intentional design? If intentional, it suggests knowledge of mathematics and geodesy, knowledge of Earth's size and shape, that we usually attribute to much later civilizations. Could it be that the builders had inherited a science now lost? The possibility of lost technology does not mean futuristic machines or lasers, as some sensational claims suggest. It could mean knowledge, methods of construction, organization, and design that were effective, but forgotten as civilizations rose and fell. Perhaps they used techniques involving counterweights, water, or acoustic. Perhaps they employed forms of leverage and mechanical advantage we have not yet rediscovered. But there are more radical theories too. Some propose that sound itself may have played a role. Ancient texts from around the world speak of stones that moved as if weightless when priests chanted or musicians played. Could the builders have discovered ways to harness vibration, resonance, or magnetism to manipulate heavy objects? To mainstream science, this is speculation, but the mystery remains. How did a Bronze Age culture achieve feats that challenge even modern cranes? Even more intriguing are the global parallels. At sites from Peru to Lebanon to Indonesia, we find megalithic stones of equal or greater size, cut and placed with uncanny precision. At Baalbek in Lebanon, blocks weighing over 1,000 tons lie in ancient foundations, still bearing the marks of mysterious quarrying. At Sacsayhuaman in Peru, walls of interlocking stones fit so tightly that not even a blade of grass can pass between them, their surfaces smoothed and beveled in ways difficult to replicate today. If cultures across the globe achieved such feats, perhaps they shared methods, or inherited them from a common source. Returning to Giza, we must also consider the pyramid's internal passages. Narrow shafts, angled at precise degrees, align with specific stars. The king's chamber, with its granite beams, supports a weight of thousands of tons, yet remains intact after millennia. The relieving chambers above it demonstrate sophisticated engineering principles. Was this all the result of trial and error? Or did the builders possess architectural knowledge far in advance of their time? Some point to the sudden decline of pyramid building after Giza. Later pyramids are smaller, cruder, and many collapse. If the Egyptians truly mastered pyramid construction, why did they not build more like Khufu's? Why did the skill vanish? Perhaps the knowledge was fragile, carried by a few, and lost when they died. Or perhaps it was never truly theirs to begin with. Perhaps they inherited a structure, maintained it, and claimed it as their own, while the true methods belonged to an earlier, forgotten age. Legends support this possibility. The Egyptians themselves attributed much of their wisdom to the god Thoth, a figure of immense knowledge, or to Osiris, the bringer of civilization. Some texts speak of the followers of Horus, a mysterious group said to precede the pharaohs, who ruled in a distant golden age. Could these figures represent memories of an earlier people, teachers, engineers, or survivors of catastrophe who passed down fragments of lost technology? Even the Great Sphinx enters the debate. Carved from a single massive block of limestone, its scale and artistry suggest skills not easily explained. Some argue it was originally built long before Khufu, its head later recarved, its body scarred by rain. If true, it may represent the most tangible link to a forgotten past. To speak of lost technology is not to imagine science fiction, but to acknowledge that knowledge is fragile. Civilizations rise, achieve, and fall. What one age masters, another forgets. If an advanced culture once thrived before Egypt, its tools may have been wood, metal, or other materials long since decayed. Only the stones remain, silent witnesses to methods we no longer know. And perhaps that is the lesson of the pyramids. They are not simply monuments of stone. They are archives, storing not only the ambitions of kings, but the mysteries of knowledge itself. Whether built by Egyptians or by an older people, they remind us that humanity's story is not linear. It is layered, cyclical, marked by brilliance and by forgetting. So when we ask if lost technologies built the pyramids, the answer may be both yes and no. Perhaps no machines beyond our comprehension were used, but perhaps yes, knowledge older than we realize shaped their creation. Knowledge so effective it could lift mountains, align stars, and carve eternity into stone. And as we stand before them, we cannot help but feel the weight of that possibility. That somewhere, buried in history's silence, are answers we have lost. And that the pyramids, in their grandeur, are not only monuments of kings, but monuments to mystery itself. Every stone of the Great Pyramid tells a story. Yet scattered among those stories are fragments that do not quite fit, pieces that refuse to align with the mainstream picture. These are the anomalies, clues left behind in quarries, chambers, and sands. They are the details that provoke questions no simple answer can resolve. Let us begin with the Great Sphinx. Officially dated to around 2500 BCE, it is said to represent Pharaoh Khafre, its immense body carved from the limestone bedrock. Yet, the head of the Sphinx is disproportionately small compared to its body. Many Egyptologists acknowledge this imbalance but explain it as stylistic choice. Alternative researchers, however, suggest something different. Perhaps the head was recarved. Perhaps the original Sphinx was older, its face weathered away, reshaped by later dynasties. If true, this would mean the body of the Sphinx, marked with signs of water erosion, predates Khafre by millennia. Nearby, in the bedrock quarries of Giza and Aswan, we find further puzzles. Blocks weighing tens of tons lie half-cut, abandoned mid-process. The famous, unfinished obelisk in Aswan, had it been completed, would have weighed over 1,000 tons, larger than any known obelisk erected in Egypt. The tool marks on its surface suggest methods of quarrying that are not easily explained by copper chisels. Some patterns appear as though immense drills or saws were used, their efficiency unmatched by the tools we associate with the Old Kingdom. Inside the pyramids, anomalies deepen. The Grand Gallery, rising steeply toward the king's chamber, is an engineering marvel. Its corbelled ceiling, built from massive stone slabs, balances forces in ways that prevent collapse despite the immense weight above. But the gallery itself seems impractical as a passageway. Its steepness, its precision, its polished surfaces, these have led some to speculate it had a purpose beyond mere access. A resonant chamber, perhaps, or part of a forgotten mechanism. The shafts of the Great Pyramid add to the enigma. Narrow and angled, they extend from the king's and queen's chambers toward the sky, too small for human passage. Some align with stars, Orion, Sirius, and others of significance in ancient mythology. But in the 1990s, robotic probes sent into these shafts discovered sealed doors deep inside, some with copper fittings. What lies beyond remains partly unknown. In one case, further exploration revealed yet another door. Why build such sealed passages? Were they symbolic? Functional? Or were they remnants of knowledge no longer understood by the later Egyptians? The Serapeum of Saqqara provides another anomaly. Beneath the sands lie massive granite boxes, some weighing up to 70 tons, carved with astonishing precision, their interiors polished smooth as mirrors. Officially, these are thought to have been sarcophagi for sacred bulls. Yet no remains were ever found within, and their sheer size raises questions. How were they moved into narrow underground corridors, and why construct them with such perfection for animals? To some, they suggest purposes far beyond what tradition claims, perhaps relics of a technology or ritual whose meaning is now lost. Then there is the Osirian at Abydos, a subterranean temple-like structure built of granite blocks fitted with megalithic precision. Unlike typical Egyptian temples, it lies deep underground and uses construction methods more reminiscent of megalithic sites elsewhere in the world. Some scholars admit it looks far older than the Temple of Seti I built above it. Could the Osirian be a remnant of an earlier civilization, later adopted by Egyptians as sacred ground? Elsewhere in Egypt, at Abu Roash, lies another pyramid, often overlooked. It is heavily ruined, almost erased. But its remains suggest it was once built with techniques even more advanced than Giza, using megalithic stonework that seems to echo methods not found in later times. Was this an experiment? A predecessor? Or a survivor of an even older age? Anomalies are not confined to structures alone. There are also artifacts. Small stone vases, some carved from hard diorite, have been found in tombs of Egypt's earliest dynasties. Their shapes are so intricate, their walls so thin, that modern artisans struggle to reproduce them without advanced lathes. And yet, they appear suddenly in history, with no clear development of techniques leading to them. Did early Egyptians possess tools we no longer recognize, or were these heirlooms from an earlier, forgotten people? One must also mention the alignment of monuments. Beyond Giza, temples and pyramids align with solstices, equinoxes, and star risings. The precision of these alignments suggests not only observational astronomy, but long-term tracking of celestial movements. Some argue that the builders were aware of precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis, taking 26,000 years to complete. If so, they possessed knowledge mainstream history does not attribute to Bronze Age cultures. Of course, skeptics dismiss many of these anomalies. Tool marks could be explained by pounding stones, shafts could be symbolic, alignments could be coincidence. But piece by piece, the anomalies form a mosaic too compelling to ignore. They suggest that beneath the official story lies a deeper one, fragmentary, obscured, but insistent. Why would such knowledge be lost? Catastrophe is one answer. If an earlier civilization endured a global flood or other disaster, survivors may have carried fragments forward, but not the whole. Over generations, the purpose of monuments may have been forgotten, their functions mythologized, their technologies reduced to legend. Later cultures may have inherited the stones but not the science, revering them without understanding. And perhaps that is what we see at Giza. Monuments that were built with methods now forgotten, repurposed by later dynasties, inscribed with names of pharaohs who claimed ownership, but whose role was only the last chapter in a much longer story. The anomalies remain. They whisper from unfinished obelisks, from silent chambers, from sealed shafts. They do not give us answers, but they ask us questions. Questions that disturb the comfort of official timelines, that invite us to imagine forgotten epics, that remind us that history is fragile. When we look at these anomalies not as accidents, but as clues, the pyramids and their companions take on a new aura. They are not just structures, but puzzles, coded messages from a past we struggle to decode. And as we trace their mysteries, we realize that the anomalies are not failures of history. They are invitations. Invitations to look deeper, to wonder more, to accept that the story of humanity is larger, stranger, and more mysterious than we have yet dared to believe. The Great Pyramid of Giza often feels like a solitary wonder, unique in its scale and enigma. Yet, when we lift our gaze beyond Egypt and look across the globe, an extraordinary realization begins to form. The pyramids of Giza are not alone. Across continents, cultures separated by oceans and millennia, we find echoes of the same architectural ambition, vast stone monuments, built with inexplicable precision, aligned to the heavens and wrapped in mystery. Why should this be? Why would people in South America, Asia, and Europe, who seemingly never met, leave behind structures that look and feel so similar? Is this merely coincidence, the result of human ingenuity finding the same solution? Or is it evidence of something deeper, connections across time, or the shared inheritance of a forgotten world? Let us begin in South America, among the highlands of Peru. At Sacsayhuaman, overlooking the city of Cusco, walls rise from the earth like frozen waves of stone. Each block is massive, some weighing over 100 tons, yet cut and fitted together with such precision that not even a sheet of paper can slide between them. Their surfaces are beveled, their edges curved, as though shaped like clay rather than carved from granite. No mortar holds them, and yet they have withstood centuries of earthquakes. To this day, no modern engineer can easily explain how such stones were transported and set into place on steep hillside. Farther south lies Pumapunku, part of the Tiwanaku complex in Bolivia. Here, stones of diorite and andesite, harder than granite, lie scattered like fragments of a giant machine. Many are carved into H shapes, notched and grooved with such accuracy that they resemble prefabricated components. Some surfaces are cut so flat that laser measurements reveal tolerances within fractions of a millimeter. Yet this site is thousands of years old, predating the Inca, who themselves claimed they inherited it from an earlier people, the first ones. The similarity to Egypt is striking. A later culture venerating structures they did not build, claiming them as inheritance rather than creation. Traveling east, we come to Mesoamerica. The Maya and Aztecs built pyramids of their own at Teotihuacan, Chichen Itza, and beyond. The Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan covers nearly the same area as the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its orientation, too, aligns with celestial events, including the setting of the Pleiades. The Maya built their pyramids in stepped form, crowned with temples, but the underlying principle is the same: massive, enduring, aligned with the stars. Why should cultures separated by oceans and centuries arrive at such similar designs? Across the Pacific, in Asia, the pattern continues. In China, near Xi'an, lie vast earthen pyramids, some hidden beneath hills and vegetation. Local legends speak of emperors and dynasties long before recorded history, rulers who built monuments now forgotten. Some of these pyramids align with celestial bodies, echoing the star maps found in Egypt. In Indonesia, at Gunung Padang, researchers have uncovered layers of stone terraces that may date back tens of thousands of years, possibly the oldest pyramid-like structure in the world. Even in Europe, echoes persist. At Malta, megalithic temples rise from limestone bedrock, older than the pyramids of Giza according to radiocarbon dating. Their massive stones, carved and arranged in curving forms, seem to represent a lost architectural tradition. At Stonehenge in England, though not a pyramid, the monument aligns with solstices, its stones hauled from distant quarries, mirroring the same obsession with sky and stone that we see in Egypt. The global parallels raise questions too big to ignore. If each culture developed independently, why do the themes repeat? Megaliths, pyramids, star alignments, myths of floods and lost ages, these threads appear everywhere. Mainstream scholars explain this as convergent evolution. Humans everywhere sought to reach upward, to align with the heavens, to build monuments of stability. The pyramid, after all, is the simplest stable form. Yet to others, the similarities suggest connection. Not contact in the conventional sense. Ships crossing oceans, cultures trading stone-cutting techniques, but something older. Perhaps all these cultures inherited fragments of a common memory. Stories of ancestors who built with stone, who measured the stars, who left behind monuments as messages. A global civilization, or at least a global influence, scattered by catastrophe and remembered only in myth. The alignments strengthen this suspicion. At Giza, the pyramids reflect Orion's belt. At Teotihuacan, the layout of the city reflects planetary orbit. At Angkor Wat in Cambodia, the temples mirror the constellation Draco. At Stonehenge, the solstices are marked. Across the globe, humans were not just building with stone, they were writing in the language of the stars. Was this coincidence, or was the night sky a shared textbook passed from one age to the next? Even the myths echo across continent. In Egypt, Atlantis and the followers of Horus. In South America, Viracocha, the bearded god who taught civilization. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent who brought knowledge. In Polynesia, Maui who lifted islands from the sea. In India, gods who walked among men, bringing wisdom and weapons. These are not identical, but they rhyme. They speak of teachers, bringers of civilization, lost ages of knowledge. Could the pyramids, then, be part of a global pattern, a stone archive not of one culture, but of humanity's forgotten chapters? Perhaps the Great Pyramid of Giza is not simply Egyptian, but universal, one voice in a chorus of monuments scattered across Earth, all saying the same thing in different languages. And if so, what was the message? Was it survival, a warning that civilizations rise and fall, that floods will come again? Was it pride, a demonstration of mastery to inspire descendants? Or was it memory, the attempt to anchor knowledge in stone, the one material capable of withstanding time's erasure? We cannot say for certain. But as we trace these parallels, from Egypt to Peru, from Mexico to China, from Malta to England, we feel the threads weaving together. A tapestry of mystery, a chorus of stone. And in that chorus, the pyramids of Giza no longer stand alone. They are part of something larger, something global, something that suggests humanity's story is deeper and more interconnected than we have ever imagined. And so the anomalies of Egypt, when placed alongside the mysteries of the world, no longer look isolated. They look like chapters of a single, hidden book, a book whose pages are written in stone, waiting for us to read. As night falls over the desert of Giza, the Great Pyramid becomes more than stone. Against the backdrop of the glittering heavens, its angles, its shafts, its alignments take on new meaning. For thousands of years, people have looked to the pyramids not only as tombs or monuments, but as gateways, bridges between earth and sky. And across the world, we find monuments built with the same obsession. Alignments to stars, solstices, and equinoxes, as if these ancient builders were speaking the same cosmic language. The question is simple but profound. Why did so many civilizations, separated by oceans and time, build monuments that align with the heavens? Was this symbolic devotion, or was it science? An effort to lock their works into the rhythm of the cosmos? Let us begin again at Giza. The Great Pyramid is aligned with extraordinary accuracy to the cardinal points of the compass. Its sides deviate from true north by less than 1/20th of a degree. Such precision is difficult even with modern surveying tools. Why such care? Why not build slightly askew, as many later structures were? Some argue this alignment was symbolic, representing balance, harmony, the union of heaven and earth. Others suggest it reflects advanced knowledge of Earth's rotation and the stars, a practical choice to embed the pyramid within a cosmic grid. Then there are the shaft. In the king's chamber and the queen's chamber, narrow passages angle upward into the sky. Too small for human passage, their purpose has been debated for centuries. But in the 1960s, researchers discovered that these shafts align with specific stars as they appeared around 2500 BCE. One points to Orion's belt, associated with Osiris, god of the afterlife. Another points to Sirius, linked with the goddess Isis. To the ancient Egyptians, these stars were not merely lights in the sky, they were destinations, realms of gods and souls. Could the shafts have been symbolic stargates, channels through which the pharaoh's spirit would ascend? And yet, the alignments do not perfectly match the skies of Khufu's time. Some argue they match better with skies thousands of years earlier, around 10,500 BCE. If so, then the shafts may not have been designed for Khufu at all, but for an older memory of the heavens, a star map frozen in stone. The layout of the three pyramids themselves deepens the mystery. They mirror the three stars of Orion's belt, not only in arrangement but in relative size. The alignment is not exact in the present sky, but it matches more closely the sky of that distant epoch at the end of the Ice Age. Was this coincidence? Or was it intentional, a way to preserve knowledge of celestial cycles and the precession of the equinoxes? This obsession with the stars is not unique to Egypt. Across the ocean, in Mexico, the pyramids of Teotihuacan align with celestial bodies as well. The Avenue of the Dead points toward the setting of the Pleiades. The Pyramid of the Sun is oriented to the position of the sun on specific days of the year, marking agricultural cycles. At Chichen Itza, the Pyramid of El Castillo produces a serpent of shadow during the equinox, a celestial dance carved in light and stone. These are not coincidences. They are calendars, observatories, messages from people who lived with the stars as companions. In Europe, Stonehenge aligns with the midsummer sunrise and midwinter sunset. In Cambodia, Angkor Wat mirrors the constellation Draco. In South America, the Nazca lines stretch across the desert, some pointing to solstices and star risings. At Machu Picchu, the Intihuatana stone is believed to have tracked the sun's movement, anchoring time itself. Everywhere, ancient builders married stone to sky. Why? One explanation is practical. Agriculture depends on the seasons, and the seasons are guided by the stars. To know when to plant and harvest, ancient peoples needed calendars more reliable than memory. The sky provided that calendar, and the monuments served as tools to track it. In this sense, the pyramids and temples were scientific instruments, observatories etched in stone. But another explanation goes deeper. For ancient peoples, the heavens were not just practical, they were sacred. The stars were gods, ancestors, destinations of the soul. By aligning their monuments to the sky, they aligned themselves to the divine. The pyramid became not only a tomb, but a ladder to eternity, a stargate through which kings could ascend and join the cosmos. There is also the question of precession. The slow wobble of Earth's axis, shifting the stars' positions over 26,000 years. To recognize precession requires careful observation over generations, perhaps centuries. Yet many monuments appear to encode this knowledge. The Giza pyramids with Orion, Angkor with Draco, the Maya with the Pleiades. Each seems to preserve a snapshot of the heavens as they appeared in ancient times. Was this deliberate? If so, it suggests an astronomical awareness far deeper than we usually attribute to early civilizations. Some researchers argue that these monuments were designed to preserve knowledge of cosmic cycles, warnings across time. If floods and cataclysms were linked to celestial alignments, as myths often suggest, then perhaps the builders encoded these cycles in stone to warn future generations. The pyramids, then, would be not only tombs or temples, but cosmic clocks, ticking across millennia, reminding us of the rhythms of destruction and renewal. The term Stargate may sound fanciful, but in a symbolic sense it fits. These monuments connected earth to sky, humans to gods, the present to eternity. Whether as observatories, calendars, or sacred gateways, they embodied the union of stone and star. When we stand at Giza and look at the pyramids against the night sky, we feel this connection. The stars above, unchanging yet ever moving, the stones below, immovable yet speaking of motion. Together they form a bridge, a message, a reminder that humanity has always sought its place among the stars. Were these alignments purely symbolic? Were they scientific? Or were they both, fused into a worldview that saw no separation between the sacred and the practical? We may never know. But what is certain is this. Across the globe, humans carved eternity into stone, always looking upward, always listening to the whisper of the cosmos. And the pyramids, perhaps more than any other monument, embody that whisper. Silent yet eloquent, grounded yet celestial, they stand as stargates of stone, doorways not only to the afterlife, but to the deepest mysteries of the universe itself. For thousands of years, the Great Pyramid stood as an enigma, its outer form magnificent, its inner corridors few but puzzling. Explorers crawled through narrow shafts, torchlight flickering against polished limestone, wondering if this massive mountain of stone still concealed secret. And for centuries, many believed that what we see is all there is, the king's chamber, the queen's chamber, and the grand gallery. But the story is changing. Modern technology has begun to peer inside the pyramid in ways our ancestors could not. Tools like ground-penetrating radar, infrared thermography, and muon tomography allow us to see through stone itself. And what these tools are revealing suggests that the pyramid is far from fully explored. Let us go back to the 1990s, when robots were first sent into the narrow shafts of the Queen's chamber. Too small for a human to enter, these shafts rise at steep angles toward the outside of the pyramid. For centuries, they were dismissed as air vents, though their size and direction made little sense for ventilation. When the robot reached deep into one shaft, it discovered something unexpected: a small stone door fitted with copper handles blocking the passage. Behind this door, in later explorations, another door was found. What lies beyond remains uncertain. Chambers? Cavities? A hidden cache? No one knows for sure. But the discovery confirmed what many suspected. The pyramid still holds secrets. Fast forward to the 21st century. A project called Scan Pyramids, launched in 2015, used cosmic ray muons, subatomic particles that constantly rain down from space, to scan the pyramid's interior. The method works like an X-ray, detecting differences in density inside massive structures. After months of data collection, the results stunned the world. Hidden within the pyramid, above the grand gallery, lay a vast void. This void, at least 30 meters long, had never been detected before. Its size rivals that of the grand gallery itself, but its purpose remains a mystery. Is it a hidden chamber, deliberately concealed? A relieving space, built to reduce pressure on lower chambers? Or something else entirely, something we cannot yet imagine? The discovery shook Egyptology. For decades, scholars had believed the Great Pyramid was well understood. Now, suddenly, there was evidence of a space untouched by human hands for thousands of years. Some speculated it could contain artifacts, treasures, or even the true burial chamber of Khufu. Others cautioned that it may be nothing more than structural. But one fact was undeniable: the pyramid is not fully mapped. Infrared scans have added more puzzles. Temperature anomalies have been detected along certain blocks of the pyramid, suggesting hollow spaces, passageways, or unknown features hidden within the stone. Ground-penetrating radar at nearby sites has revealed tunnels beneath the Giza Plateau, some natural, others perhaps artificial. Together, these findings hint that the surface we see is only part of a larger, more intricate complex. Nor is Giza unique. Across Egypt, discoveries continue to challenge what we thought we knew. At Saqqara, underground tombs and shafts continue to be unearthed, revealing labyrinths that stretch deeper than expected. At Abydos, the Osirian, a subterranean temple of megalithic stone, remains unexplained, its age and purpose unclear. These discoveries remind us that Egypt still holds countless secrets beneath its sand. The Great Pyramid, though, commands special fascination. If hidden chambers exist, what might they contain? Ancient texts speak of Hall of Records, repositories of knowledge hidden by gods or sages in ages past. Some fringe theories suggest the pyramids were libraries in stone, meant to safeguard wisdom from cataclysms. Mainstream scholars dismiss these as myths. But until the voids are explored, the possibility remains alive. And perhaps it is not just chambers. Some researchers speculate that the pyramid's very design encodes information, mathematical constants, astronomical knowledge, proportions of Earth itself. If so, the hidden spaces may not hold physical treasures, but intellectual ones, clues to understanding why the pyramid was built with such care. Yet exploration is not easy. The pyramid is fragile, its stones ancient. Drilling, cutting, or forcing entry risks damage. Egypt's authorities, protective of their heritage, proceed cautiously. Robots may be sent again, muon scans refined, new data gathered. But for now, much of what lies hidden remains exactly that, hidden. And so, the Great Pyramid continues to stand as a paradox. We know it intimately, mapped and measured down to centimeters. And yet, we do not know it at all. Vast spaces may lie within, untouched for thousands of years, holding secrets that could change our understanding of history. Imagine if one day technology allows us to enter those hidden void. What might we find? A burial chamber? A collection of artifacts? Or nothing at all, just empty stone, silence preserved across ages? Each possibility carries its own weight, its own mystery. For now, the hidden chambers remind us of one simple truth. The pyramids are not finished giving up their secret. Even in the age of satellites and lasers, they remain enigmas, their silence deeper than our questions. And perhaps that is their true gift. They are not merely monuments of stone, but puzzles that endure, luring us to look closer, to wonder more, to remember that history is not closed but open, not finished but unfolding. The Great Pyramid is not simply what it appears. It is more. And with every new discovery, every anomaly, every hidden void, we are reminded that we are only at the beginning of understanding. History, as we are taught, is a neat story. Humanity rose from the caves, invented agriculture around 10,000 years ago, built the first cities a few thousand years later, and gradually advanced toward the present. The Great Pyramid, in this story, is a crowning achievement of Egypt's Old Kingdom, a brilliant but isolated moment of human ingenuity. But what if this story is incomplete? What if the pyramids are older than we think? What if the anomalies, the erosion patterns, the alignments, the hidden chambers are not outliers but clues? If so, then the timeline of civilization is not a straight line, it is a tapestry with missing threads, forgotten chapters, and cycles of rise and fall. To rewrite history is not to discard what we know, but to widen the frame. For instance, mainstream archaeology tells us agriculture began in Mesopotamia around 9000 BCE. Yet sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dated to nearly 12,000 years ago, show massive stone temples built by hunter-gatherers. These structures predate not only the pyramids, but farming itself, overturning the assumption that complex monuments require settled, agricultural societies. If Göbekli Tepe is possible, then why not the pyramids, or their prototypes, in an earlier age? Similarly, myths of floods, found from Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica, align eerily with geological evidence of dramatic sea level rise at the end of the last ice age, around 11,600 years ago. Entire coastlines vanished beneath water, perhaps taking with them cities and civilizations. If survivors fled inland, might they have carried with them knowledge, astronomy, architecture, mathematics, that later blossomed in Egypt? The pyramids could be the echoes of a civilization erased by rising seas. Rewriting history also means re-evaluating what we consider possible. For centuries, scholars assumed ancient people lacked the ability to move massive stones. Yet the evidence of Sacsayhuaman, Baalbek, and Giza proves otherwise. They did it, somehow. To cling to the idea that they could not is to deny the stones themselves. Perhaps their methods were different, not reliant on iron or machines, but on techniques we have forgotten, methods rooted in deep observation of nature, mechanics, and human organization. If so, then human ingenuity stretches farther back than textbooks allow. Civilization may not be a gift of the last 5,000 years, but a recurring flame, kindled, extinguished, and rekindled across ages. Each cycle leaves behind fragments, myths of gods and floods, monuments of stone, alignments with stars. Each time we rediscover, we believe we are the first, but perhaps we are not. The pyramids, then, become not just Egyptian monuments, but symbols of continuity. They are the bridge between what we remember and what we have forgotten. If they are older, then they are messages. Not from aliens, not from gods, but from ourselves, from an earlier humanity whose story is mostly erased. This possibility challenges more than history. It challenges identity. To believe we are the pinnacle of human achievement is comforting. But to accept that others may have risen before us, reached heights and fallen, is humbling. It suggests that progress is not inevitable, that knowledge can be lost, that civilizations are fragile. And yet, this idea is also inspiring. If humanity has risen before, it can rise again. If the pyramids are archives of forgotten knowledge, then perhaps we too can leave messages for the future. If the stones whisper of lost ages, then they remind us that we are part of something larger, a story of cycles, resilience, and rediscovery. Rewriting history also requires us to question authority. For centuries, scholars resisted the idea that Troy was real. It was only myth until it was found. Scholars dismissed the idea of Ice Age civilizations until Göbekli Tepe was unearthed. Again and again, discoveries force us to expand the timeline. Perhaps the pyramids will be the next revelation, not younger, but older, not simple tombs, but complex messages from a forgotten world. Imagine the implications. If the pyramids are 10,000 years old, then Egypt was not the cradle of civilization, but its heir. If lost civilizations existed, then myths of Atlantis, Zep Tepi, and Golden Ages are not fantasy, but memory. If humanity has risen before, then the future is not a straight road, but a cycle, and we are part of that cycle. This does not diminish the Egyptians. On the contrary, it places them in a grander story. Perhaps they were the preservers, the inheritors of monuments too great to abandon, too mysterious to ignore. They added inscriptions, mythology, context. But the stones themselves may be older, silent survivors of a world they too only half understood. To rewrite history is to listen carefully to what the stones say. The erosion, the alignments, the hidden chambers, they are not noise, they are whispers. And when we place them alongside the myths of floods, the ruins of Göbekli Tepe, the megaliths of Peru and Lebanon, a picture begins to form. Not a clear picture, but a tantalizing one. Humanity is older, more complex, and more mysterious than we thought. And perhaps that is the true lesson of the pyramids. Not that they are older or younger, not that they are tombs or observatories, but that they remind us of humility, that our knowledge is incomplete, our history unfinished, our story still unfolding. As we stand before them, we realize that to rewrite history is not to close a book, but to open it wider, to admit that there are chapters we have not yet read, pages we have not yet turned, voices we have not yet heard. The pyramids are not answers. They are questions, questions carved in stone, pointing to the sky, inviting us to wonder. And in that wonder lies the possibility of rewriting not only history, but our understanding of who we are. When we stand before the Great Pyramid, questions crowd our minds. Who built it? Why? How? And perhaps most elusive of all, what does it truly mean? For centuries, scholars, mystics, explorers, and dreamers have offered answers. Some explanations are grounded in archaeology, others in myth, and still others in speculation that stretches beyond Earth itself. Together, they form a spectrum of theories, each attempting to solve the same eternal riddle. The first and most widely accepted theory is that of mainstream Egyptology. According to this view, the pyramids were tombs for the pharaohs of the Old Kingdom, primarily Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. They were built using vast labor forces, tens of thousands of workers, organized with remarkable efficiency, hauling blocks with sledges and ropes, stacking them using ramps and scaffolding. The alignment with the stars was symbolic, reflecting the pharaoh's divine connection to the heavens. For scholars, the pyramids represent the genius of early state organization, the pinnacle of Egypt's engineering capabilities, and monuments of human ambition. This theory has much evidence in its favor. Inscriptions in nearby tombs, workers' villages, quarry marks inside the pyramid itself. Yet it leaves gaps. The precision, the scale, the anomalies that resist explanation. And into those gaps flow alternative theories. One of the most prominent is the lost civilization theory. This view holds that the pyramids are older than Egypt's dynasties, remnants of a forgotten people who possessed knowledge and techniques now lost. The water erosion on the Sphinx, the astronomical alignments to skies of 10,000 BCE, the sudden appearance of megalithic skills without precedent, all suggest to proponents that the pyramids are inheritances, not creations. Survivors of a cataclysm, perhaps a flood at the end of the Ice Age, may have passed down fragments of their wisdom, seeding civilizations like Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Mesoamerica. The pyramids, in this telling, are not just tombs, but archives, messages in stone from an earlier age of humanity. Then there is the alien intervention theory, perhaps the most controversial, yet popular in popular imagination. It proposes that extraterrestrial beings assisted, or even directly constructed, the pyramids. Advocates point to the scale, the precision, the mysterious energies some claim to feel within the structures. They argue that ancient humans lacked the technology, and that myths of gods descending from the sky are literal accounts of alien contact. Mainstream scholars dismiss this theory as sensationalism, noting that it underestimates human ingenuity. Yet its appeal endures, fueled by the sheer mystery of the pyramids and the fascination with the unknown. Another interpretation is symbolic and spiritual. In this view, the pyramids were not merely tombs, but metaphysical machines, designed to guide the soul of the pharaoh to the afterlife. Their shape, pointing to the heavens, symbolizes ascent. The internal shafts, aligned with Orion and Sirius, are channels for the spirit. The pyramid itself is a ladder of stone, a bridge between earth and eternity. Some esoteric traditions take this further, suggesting the pyramids were initiation chambers, designed to transform the soul through ritual, resonance, or even energy fields created by their geometry. Others propose a scientific energetic theory. They note that the pyramid's geometry focuses energy, be it light, sound, or electromagnetic fields. Some experiments claim that pyramid shapes can preserve food, sharpen razors, or influence biological systems. While many of these claims are anecdotal, they fuel the idea that the pyramids were not just symbolic, but functional, machines of energy, built with a purpose we have forgotten. Still others turn to mathematical and astronomical theories. The Great Pyramid encodes ratios that approximate pi and the golden ratio. Its base perimeter compared to its height reflects the ratio of Earth's circumference to its radius. Some argue these are coincidences. Others see deliberate design. If intentional, the pyramid becomes a stone model of Earth, the heavens, and universal principles, a cosmic blueprint left for future generations. What unites all these theories is one thing: wonder. Whether built by Egyptians, lost civilizations, aliens, or as cosmic machines, the pyramids provoke awe. They resist easy explanation, standing as eternal questions carved in limestone. Perhaps the truth lies not in one theory, but in fragments of many. Perhaps the Egyptians built the pyramids, but on foundations older than their dynasty. Perhaps the pyramids were tombs, but also observatories, calendars, or temples. Perhaps myths of gods and aliens are not literal, but memories of lost knowledge, recast in the language of the divine. In the end, the theories tell us as much about ourselves as about the pyramid. The scholar sees human ingenuity. The dreamer sees lost worlds. The mystic sees symbols of eternity. The futurist sees alien machines. Each interpretation reflects a longing to explain, to connect, to belong to something greater. And maybe that is the greatest mystery of all, that the pyramids are mirrors, reflecting our questions back at us, never giving final answers. They endure not because we understand them, but because we do not. Their silence invites speculation, and speculation keeps them alive. So the theories multiply like stars in the night sky. Each one a point of light, each one a possibility. Together, they form a constellation, not of certainty, but of curiosity. And as long as the pyramids stand, that constellation will never fade. The desert night is silent. Above the sands, the stars shimmer, distant yet eternal. And there, rising from the earth like frozen mountains of memory, the pyramids stand. They have stood for thousands of years, through wind and storm, through empire and ruin, through discovery and denial. They stand still today, as they will tomorrow, keepers of secrets older than our questions. We have walked around them in thought, exploring their precision, their alignments, their anomalies. We have listened to myths of floods and golden ages, to whispers of lost civilizations, to theories of gods, aliens, and forgotten science. We have peered with modern machines into their stones, discovering voids and passages, mysteries yet unopened. And still, the question remains, what are the pyramids? Perhaps they are tombs, the resting places of kings who sought eternity in stone. Perhaps they are archives, preserving fragments of knowledge from a world erased by flood. Perhaps they are ladders of spirit, stairways of geometry guiding souls to the stars. Or perhaps they are something we cannot yet imagine, their true purpose hidden, waiting for an age when we are ready to understand. What is certain is this: the pyramids are more than monuments. They are mirrors of humanity itself. In their grandeur, we see ambition. In their precision, we see intelligence. In their silence, we see mystery. And in our endless questions about them, we see ourselves, our need to know, to connect, to reach beyond what is known. For the listener lying in stillness, these stones become a meditation. They remind us of the fragility of time, of the vastness of history, of the possibility that we are not the first to wonder, nor will we be the last. Others before us stood where we stand, gazing at these same stones, asking the same questions. Others after us will do the same. The pyramids unite us across ages, a conversation in silence. Perhaps this is their true gift. Not answers but questions, not clarity but wonder. They invite us to step outside the narrow corridor of our present and glimpse the immensity of human possibility. They remind us that civilizations rise and fall, but curiosity endures. That knowledge can be lost, but wonder survives. That though we may forget, we also rediscover. As the wind moves across the plateau, the pyramids seem to whisper, we are not only of the past. We are of the present. We are of the future. We are eternal. And so the mystery remains. No theory resolves it fully, no scan pierces it entirely, no story captures it completely. The pyramids endure as enigmas, vast and silent, defying certainty. And perhaps that is why they matter so much, because in their mystery, they keep alive something essential, our imagination. Close your eyes now and picture them, standing beneath the stars, their edges softened by time, their presence unshaken. Imagine the countless generations who have looked at them, each seeing something different: power, divinity, knowledge, hope. Imagine yourself among them, part of that endless chain of wonder. The pyramids do not answer us, but they listen. They hold our questions, our dreams, our myths, as patiently as they hold the desert sands. And in that silence they speak, not in words, but in presence. A reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, but savored. So let the Great Pyramids rest in your mind as you drift deeper into stillness. Let their stones remind you of endurance, their shape remind you of ascent, their mystery remind you of wonder. They are eternal, and in their eternity they offer us peace. The pyramids are not simply monuments of the past. They are companions of humanity, guardians of our imagination, eternal mysteries carved in stone. And as long as they stand, so too will the questions, and so too will the wonder.